So this one says, not sure I can trust my husband after finding out he secretly spent all our savings. I just found out that my husband has secretly blown through our savings, and I don't know if I can trust him anymore. We've been married for 2 years, and saving has always been a huge priority, and at one point we were putting away 20 to 30% of our paychecks to pay for the wedding and buy our first home. We've always had a system. His steady paycheck covers our monthly bills, and since I'm a freelancer with a varying income, I cover the bigger expenses like a new car after his broke down and replacing our HVAC. I've managed to build my savings over the last 2 years. Tonight, I found out that my husband has saved nothing. When I confronted him about it, his excuse was that he's always paying off their credit card each month. But after looking through our budget and based on his income, he should have at least $3,000 left over every month after covering the bills. He had no answer when I asked him where it's going. I finally looked through the statements, and what I found was infuriating. No signs of cheating or gambling, just reckless spending on the most random shit. It feels like a complete betrayal, especially after we agreed to build our savings so we can move and start a family. Where do I go from here?
Oh, that sucks. Like, you've been over in your corner, like busting your ass, and then you find out like the person you're spending your life with has just been not doing that. Like that's a tough situation. Yeah. Especially like after it sounds like they sat down and made a plan, like, hey, this is what we want to do, probably put a timeline to it, figured out some numbers to it. And she's just like working the plan, and he's just kind of hanging out in the corner. I don't know. That's a really tough situation, but it's also why, like, I think it's really hard when married couples in particular decide like, hey, we're going to do this. Now you go work over there. I'm going to go work over here. Like, it's hard to make progress and to be accountable to the plan that you two have set if you two are kind of off doing your own things. Right? Like, it sounds like they, like she said, like, we've always had a system. Like, he just does this with his money and I do this with my money. Very like separate. And it's tough to keep like moving along the same path if you two are working two different things, I don't know. It seems to me like they needed a little bit more transparency, but the good thing is, like, when she looked through the statements, there was no cheating or gambling. Yeah. It was just being dumb with money, right? Like, and that's something that can be fixed, right? Like, that's to me is a shitty situation, but not necessarily a deal breaker, right? I don't know though. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel the same type of way. Like, yeah, no cheating, gambling. Okay, we can work with this. But I think you're right. I think they had all these good plans, but like, if you're not like combining at least your savings account, because that Eddie and I don't fully combine everything, but we do have our high yield savings together. So both of our savings goals go into that. That's where our emergency fund is. It's like a big pot of money that we have split out on like a spreadsheet. So we're able to see that, because that's what I was kind of wondering when I was first reading this. Like, how did this even happen? Like, how did she know he wasn't saving anything? But it's probably because they don't have anything that's sort of shared like that. So you wouldn't really notice if this person was not being honest with you. So I think that's super important. Like, you guys have to communicate a lot more about this and actually give real numbers, and probably even need to like dive in like a little more frequently about your, daily expenses or whatever, because it seems like this person, like your husband, needs to like have that accountability, because it just sounds like, maybe it started out innocently, like he didn't realize he really had a spending problem, and it seems like it's just sort of spiraled out of control, and maybe he's felt embarrassed to say anything about it. So just having that accountability, sitting down together, looking through everything, combining at least a savings account so you guys can see what's going in, I think that'll also like help him on the accountability front.
That's what I was going to say on the communication side. Like, even if, like, I know how you've described how you and Eddie do your finances. Like, even if you guys didn't have a shared account, like, just the constant communication, because you two are so open with money, like, this wouldn't happen where, like, where you've been making progress in one direction and he's been making progress in a different direction. Like, that just wouldn't happen because of the communication. So there's clearly like a lack of communication on what they're doing with their finances, even if they decided to keep things separately, right? Like, you still need to have the joint values of where we're going, the joint goals of where we're going, and then that's going to translate into how you each handle your money. And again, if like in the moment that happens, like two separate accounts or whatever, that's separate from the fact that you two are operating on the same like system for how you manage your finances. But the thing that really caught me too is that she said that at one point they were putting away 20 to 30% of their paychecks. It sounds like he has the steady income, so like that was probably like a pretty set number every single month. They were fine doing that, saved up for the wedding, saved up to buy a home, everything was good. And then all of a sudden, like, then, what happened from that then until now to where it's like this spending issue came up, and it's just a bunch of, what did she say? Like, just on the most random shit, or like what came up to where it went from being able to save 20 to 30% to now being in a place where it's like, your spending is just so out of control that you can't save anything. And it even led to you secretly draining your joint or like whatever savings that you two had. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even catch that part. I thought it was just more of like him saying that he was putting that in. And I'm just wondering if maybe she didn't realize, like, if you're not keeping like good track of it, like, do you know what's really even going in there? Yeah. That's super interesting. But like you said, I feel like you have to have like a shared vision on your money. And for this couple, like this person's probably like, do I need to get a divorce over this? Like, I personally don't think so. I just think like you guys have to be real with each other. And if your husband's not willing to be real about it or not willing to change or, you know, take responsibility for what happened here and actually make some change moving forward, then, you know, that's something you have to ask yourself. But I feel like this can easily be fixed. You just have to like be a lot more transparent about what's going on. You guys need to sit down and map out like a budget together, a spending plan together for your money, even if you don't want to like combine everything, if you just want to have like a joint savings together to keep each other accountable that way. But yeah, I feel like, you know, definitely need some more communication on this front because it was obviously lacking if all of this was going down and you didn't realize it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think a divorce over this is a pretty extreme move.
Sure.
And that's not to say like this doesn't feel like a betrayal, right? Like I would feel like that's a betrayal as well. Like you two made a plan. You two said, all right, we're going to go and work this plan. And then you found out you're the only one working the plan. You know, like that does suck. But I'd imagine that there was also something going on in the background that like caused him to not make progress with this plan. Like, does he hate the job? Does he hate the goal that they're working towards? Like, what is it that's going on in the background to where he was able to save a significant portion of his income and now is no longer able to because he let his spending get out of control? But yeah, like they really need to figure out how do they get back to being on the same page. And then like, in situations like this where one person feels betrayed, especially when it comes to the finances, like I think the way you move forward from that is like, you obviously got on the same page, you figure out what needs to change. And then you have to kind of put in like these, like being very intentional about having more transparency until that trust is rebuilt. Because if she feels like this is something that could be divorce worthy, then there's a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt, which means there's got to be a whole lot more transparency going on until you kind of overcome that hurdle, I guess. Yeah.
Something I was thinking about was, if this person was saving 20 to 30% before, you know how sometimes like when you go on like a really strict diet and then like you're done with your diet and then you just eat a bunch of food and bad stuff. It's kind of like the same thing. Like if he felt so restrictive for so long that like all of his money was going to pay for this wedding, like I could very well see a world where you're like, I just want to spend my money. I'm tired of saving everything I have. Like I could definitely see that. And then it becomes a little out of control to the point where you feel like it's like you're past a point of no return. So I could see that as well.
Yeah, it becomes a habit, right? Like you build that muscle a little too much, that spending muscle, and now it's hard to break it. I can see that. That's a really good point. If the 20 to 30% of savings if that was the anomaly, if that was like the moment of like, wow, this is wild, and this is maybe him returning to like, initially returning to what felt normal, and then just kind of needing to go to the other end of the spectrum to feel like things were better in his mind. I could totally see that.
The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.